in politics today, everyone is talking about Mother Earth, and Bharat Mata, but no one treats her as a mother.
You've been sometimes called the Gandhi of Grain.
The poor cows, they're oozing blood, and it's the milk. That's why I have applied also Gandhi's principles, that non-violence is the way we should relate to the earth, and non-violence should be in every level of our food system. Non-violence to the earth and non-violence to our body. Learn to grow your food. Learn to plant a garden. Even in your apartment in a city, learn to cook a food. Start having parties around cooking food,
Yeah, it can be fun. Dr. Vandana Shiva, you have argued that in a way our life and times are now defined by speed. That we have this sensation of the hours going by at breakneck speed, and at the end of the day we still don't know where the time went. You're quite literally appealing to us, to the world, to slow down. Is speed the great addiction of our time?
Speed is definitely an externality of the age of the machine, the age of fossil fuels. Because machines, unlike living systems, run on external input of energy.
Your book calls this the fossil age.
It is the fossil age.
Why is it the fossil age?
It's a fossil age because it has fossilized our minds, it's fossilized our hearts, it's fossilized our thinking, and it has fossilized our relationships.
Explain that.
So speed is the environmental externality of the fossil fuel age, and distancing of people, not having time. When you read the news, every second day there's a little suicide over little kids getting addicted to silly little programs on their mobiles. We could never ever get bored. When the publishers handed me the book this morning, my sister was remembering how books is what our pastime was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have a mobile phone? Talking about phones?
I do have a mobile phone, but I usually keep it very far away.
So how do you communicate? There is an assumption these days that if you don't have a phone, if you're not wired, if you're getting left behind by technology, you can't actually survive in what you call the fossil age. So how do you communicate?
So for me, communication is making a choice to communicate.
Okay.
Not being forced into communication. So the mobile is there, and if I desperately need to call someone, I will look for it and make the call. But by and large, my communication is still handwriting with a pen and pencil. If I have paper and a pencil or a pen.
Did you write this book? Did you write this book pen to paper?
Yes. The
Really?
first edition always.
Tell me this, you make a very interesting connection between the speed at which we live and climate change. You join the dots between the need to slow down and climate change. Firstly, we live in an age where we still have climate change denialism. The most powerful man in the world, the President of America, is a climate change, represents climate change denialism. What is the connection, and why do you draw a connection in your book between slower living and protecting the climate?
I think the whole idea of speed, the whole idea of fast food, fast clothing is all linked to the fact that in the fossil fuel age, we are measuring the efficiency and productivity of any activity through speed. How much faster can people weave, by pressing a button and let the machine do the weaving. Whereas we grew up with hand looms and hand weaving. I've studied physics and I've done a PhD in quantum theory. I chose to study quantum theory because quantum theory says position and speed are irrelevant entities. What matters is the potential. Not how fast are you traveling where.
How has this changed the Earth?
The Earth has changed because speed's externality is the pollution of the three big gases that are leading to what they call the climate change. Carbon dioxide is one, but 300 times more deadly than carbon dioxide is nitrous oxide, which comes from fertilizers, and methane, which comes from these mountains of junk. When you go past the mountains of junk when you enter Delhi, because when I come from Dehradun, we pass the Ghaziabad junk.
And there's that big...
And you get the smell.
Yeah.
And always a permanent fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that doing to us?
That's basically what it does. Is it creates a pollution layer around the earth, which allows the heat to come in, but it doesn't allow it to get out.
You've been sometimes called the Gandhi of Grain. And what is very interesting about your book, and nobody would expect this from a physicist, a quantum theorist, a book on climate change, there's a recipe for rasam in this book, among other recipes. Why did you feel the need to join the dots between what we should eat, saving the earth, saving ourselves, and slowing down?
Well, two big reasons, Barkha. First, because everything that is leading to climate disasters, which I call a metabolic disorder of the earth, because I definitely, in politics today, everyone is talking about Mother Earth, and Bharat Mata, but no one treats her as a mother. And as a mother, she's living and she sustains us. And as a living being called Gaia, the earth self-organizes herself. So for 4 billion years, the temperatures of the earth were maintained. All the indicators that make what is called the climate were the same. And if you talk to the older people in the villages, because I work with the farmers, they will tell you about the different seasons, and you could predict when the season will come, and you could predict your farming. But now you can't predict, both because of the disaster of climate change. You don't know when the rains will come. You don't know whether summer will be hot or freezing. You don't know anymore. And the whole issue of, and I'd done an earlier book called Soil Not Oil, and had worked out in an assessment that about 50% of the pollution that's leading to climate change is from the food system, food and agriculture system, chemical food and agriculture system. And the two elements of the chemical system and a globalized trade system is, instead of growing locally, you're importing. That's what this whole debate of the US-India free trade treaty is about.
Yeah.
And because the further your food travels, the more food miles it has. The more the food miles you have, the more emissions you have.
Now, you have, of course, spoken against this sort of industrial agriculture model. How do you look at the debate around the tariffs and the US-India trade interim agreement? The government keeps saying that agriculture and dairy are protected spaces and will remain protected spaces. Have you been following the sort of debate around this?
It's very difficult to follow a debate which has not been brought either to Parliament or it has not been brought to the public. One day it is President Trump announces it, and then it's today we'll have an agreement, and then it's by March we'll have an agreement. And because I have followed the whole, originally the GATT and then the WTO, and those were multilateral agreements.
But Trump has dismantled those systems.
Yeah, he's discounted everything that the world had agreed to multilaterally as a system of rules that everyone will follow. That no one is bigger or smaller. The smallest little island nation, smallest little Himalayan nation, and that's why, who are the two big countries who've made a difference to the climate debate? The little island called Maldives and little Bhutan.
Yeah.
It isn't their size, and it isn't their richness, and it isn't their speed. Because their vote counts the same as America's vote in the multilateral system.
But that system is gone.
I don't think it's gone. I think if there are enough countries willing to hold up multilateralism will set the rules, and one country will not. The one country that is anyway on decline. They used to say for the British Empire that the sun never sets on the British Empire, and then it sets. It sets so badly.
Yeah.
And the American Empire will go in a similar way.
Let's come back to the book. Why are we reading Rasam recipes from Dr. Vandana Shiva?
Because the way you grow your food and the way you cook your food and what you eat decides a lot what the state of the climate is.
So let's pick up real examples from our life. What is it that we are eating that unthinkingly we don't even know is not just maybe ruining our health? There is still some conversation about what it does to our body. There is a lesser conversation about what it does to our planet.
Yeah, and I think people are forgetting that eating is about health. You know, in a totally different silo, all kinds of wellness clinics are coming up.
Yeah.
But we don't realize that every meal creates wellness or disease. If 50% of the greenhouse gases leading to climate change come from a chemical industrialized fossil food system, at least 50-60% of the new chronic diseases are coming from the way we eat. And that's why we have put recipes in the book. That
how have you personally applied this to your own life? We were just talking before we started filming that you spend most of your time in Dehradun. Your mother grew many trees, enabled a farm space for you. You grow your own vegetables. For people who can't do that, and that's the other thing in the book that I found really nice, there's an entire chapter on how people can grow their own vegetables, and this is and you actually break it up by spaces that people live in, because not everybody lives on a farm. Somebody may live in a small little flat with nothing but a container to grow things in, and you have different sort of prescriptions for all of these living conditions. So let's start with you. How do you apply your thoughts to your personal life?
Yeah, so
what do you eat? How do you live?
I'm extremely fortunate to not have to need containers to grow food, both because our family home in which we grew up, as well as the Navdanya farm that has been built, they grow vegetables, and now the season is coming for the lychees and the mangoes. And while I'm writing a book and I want a break, I just step out and there's a lychee tree outside the window, and I eat some lychees, you know.
And what do we do who live in a city, and we live in as polluted a city as this capital?
Find a place that grows these things and create these partnerships. Create partnerships. Everyone's talking about communication, but real communications we've forgotten. Nobody knows who their farmer is. Nobody knows how the farmer grows the food. The other day, one of my colleagues was telling me she goes to pick up the milk, and there was blood on the top of the milk, because they're giving so many injections and hormones for more milk. And then the poor cows, they're oozing blood. And it's the milk, you know. That's why I have applied also Gandhi's principles, that non-violence is the way we should relate to the earth. And non-violence should be in every level of our food system. Non-violence to the earth and non-violence to our body. Because every time, what speed does to our food is it makes it travel faster and further, and in the process you pretend this is fresh. I remember when I went to do my PhD in quantum theory to Canada, and I'm a vegetarian. You know, for us, we never had veganism in our time. We had either veg or non-veg.
Yeah.
Even now in the Shatabdi, they ask veg or non-veg. Even on the flights, veg or non-veg.
Yeah.
Uske aage bari gaadi nahi badti, veg or non-veg. So I would go to the soup section, and there would be 200 soups, Campbell soups. But you look at the ingredients, it's all the same.
It's out of a can.
Yeah, out of a can, and to keep it in a can for a while with a best before date, you have to add all kinds of chemicals. And everything we eat interacts with our body, because our body is a living body. And there's communication going on all the time. And now, 10 years ago, at an airport, I saw a book, and then I went to meet that scientist and meet the doctor. And the book was the brain-body connection. And he calls the gut the second brain of the body, that at every point there's interaction going on, and neurological interaction. You know, every molecule is talking to each other.
What is it that Dr. Vandana Shiva would never eat out of a packet?
I would never eat anything that has cottonseed oil, because all seed is blended, or all oil is blended now, because all cottonseed oil is now coming from GM cotton, and I would not eat palmolene oil. And that's why, for me, simple things is where slow living comes from. And you know, sometime a chef asked me, what's your favorite dish? I said, for me, my favorite dish is khichdi.
There's a khichdi recipe in the book also.
Yeah, both because it's easy to cook, it's a whole meal. And the lovely thing about khichdi is, if you're ill, you eat it. If you celebrate Pongal, you eat it.
Yes.
No matter what the time,
Yes.
you eat khichdi. You know?
Yes.
It's for all periods.
Yeah.
And all ingredients can go into it.
But there's a counter question I have here. You know, it's become a little bit of a cliche, at least among upper middle class Indians, to eat locally grown produce. So there is that awareness that is coming, and that's a good thing. But somebody once told me nothing in India is truly organic. And this was somebody who cynically said this to me. I want to ask you two questions. One, is organic produce now accessible only to the rich? One. Two, how do we avoid eating local, being vocal for local? How do we avoid this being a cliche, and a cliche that can only be embraced by those who have wealth?
I think it's a total myth that organic is only for the rich, because actually the poor people who are eating in the ration shops right now. You know,
Okay, but anything that has pesticides
per acre, and we are spending $1.2 trillion on making foods available to the poor.
And that's a good thing.
No, but the point is you can make good food available to the poor without that kind of money.
So please elaborate.
Right now we are having to subsidize so heavily, because first you have to subsidize the farmer to buy fertilizer. Then you have to subsidize the farmer for the minimum support price. But now the price has gone high, and then you have to procure, and you have to subsidize to be able to make food cheap, to get distributed to all the poor people through the PDS system. And ever since the World Bank started to so-called reform the PDS system, the bill for the PDS system has increased.
Yeah, but you've heard the arguments why farmers use urea or other fertilizers, because their yield is not big enough if they don't. That's the conventional argument, right? What would you say to counter that?
Well, it's precisely to counter that very, very false claim of yield, that I've evolved the measure of health per acre. That food is not just tarazu pe tol ke bech do. No, food is about your nutrition and the nutrition of the soil.
When you speak with farmers, what do they say?
You know, so when I speak with farmers, I always relate to what they're doing. And that's why I remember the first time in West UP, where our sugarcane grows, and I've converted many sugarcane farmers to organic. And we do organic gourd, which is available in Navtanya stores. You know, first they do a havan, and they did, you know, ye shanti, wo shanti, and then of course they bring, they spray the urea. So I told them what the urea is, how it's made, that it's made from fossil fuels, and what it does to all the living organisms, how many living organisms there are in the soil. ऐसे बोलते तो बहुत शांति 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 करते हो, और अपने एग्रीकल्चर में तो वॉरफेयर कर रहे हो. So they understand. ऐसे कान पकड़ लेते हैं, है ना?
There's a lot of chatter about how Indian farmers should be encouraged to diversify what they're growing. Do you agree with that?
I agree about diversification, but not the way it has entered the debate. You know, it's only in the 60s. I wrote my first book when I wasn't even looking at agriculture fully. I wrote my first book, The Violence of the Green Revolution, for a United Nations project on violence and conflicts over resources. And I said to the United Nations University, you've asked me to look at your conflicts over resources, but I think the biggest conflict that's happening is in agriculture. Look at what happened to Punjab. Please let me study the roots of this violence. So they let me study, and that's when I started to look at the Green Revolution. So the Green Revolution became a monoculture of rice and wheat. If you go to Punjab, you just see miles and miles and miles of rice, and then miles and miles and miles of wheat. And then towards the southwest, miles and miles of BT cotton. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. And I was giving a talk in Bhatinda once, and they came running up to me and said, please come with us now to this village. A farmer has committed suicide. So I went with them. It was evening, the sun was setting, and a farmer had committed suicide. But while going to the village, there was one farmer on a bullock cart with a big drum of pesticide, and a young boy on a cycle with 2 drums. And when I asked them, I said, what are you carrying? Dawai. The translation of pesticide in the Hindi language is
Dawai.
Is Keetnashak Dawai. It's such a misnomer. And I said to this old man in the bullock cart, I said, ye jante hain zahar hai, dekhiye ye label. It was in English, that it's poison. So he, instead of saying yes, it's poison, he said, now I understand why hamare aam pe bore kyun nahi pad rahi. That all the bees are dying and there's no pollination anymore.
Yeah.
And the young man on the cycle, he says, अब समझ आया मेरे को इतना चक्कर क्यों आता है. मैं स्प्रे करने के बाद जब घर जाता हूँ तो मेरे को 2-3 घंटे लेटना पड़ता है to recover. So the people are feeling the impact, but the true explanation is not there because everything has become about selling the pesticides.
Let's come to technology. Technology was supposed to make our lives better. Is there any hope, before I come to artificial intelligence, is there any hope that you see in technology that could be harnessed to improve the lives of farmers, the farmer on the bullock cart that you met, the young boy you met who's still spraying his fields with poison chemicals? Is there any hope that technology can bring to these farmers?
I think hope for me lies in truth. Technology is a means. When you treat it as a means, you can always enable it to get you to the real means, which for life are joy and happiness and peace and non-violence.
Yeah.
And technology is not an end, and technology is not a measure. It's a means.
But is it a means? Can it be a means to help?
No, if you define what it exactly. So I have spent so much of I spent 3 years doing a PhD, but I spent much more time looking at free trade and looking at agriculture. But I can tell you this much, that if I'm spraying in my field poison, I'm destroying the biosphere in my field. But if I am spraying poison from a drone, I'm killing the ecosystem of my neighbors without asking their permission. And drone didi keh ke, women ko bhi abuse kar rahe ho, nature ko bhi abuse kar rahe ho. But that's why I mean truth, it matters.
So you're not a fan of...
You can't say that the drone technology will help. What is the drone being used for? Is it still being used for poison? And how is it spreading? What's the spread of that poison? What is the impact of that poison on all life on earth?
So you're saying that instead of the conversation being how do we move farmers away from pesticides, we have actually refurbished the use of pesticides in the garb of modernity by deploying drones. And how do you wish they had been deployed instead, if they were to be deployed at all?
I think for the farmer to be able to monitor the weather more closely, one of the things we've done in Navdanya is we bought simple little equipment. Measure the rain. You tell me the rain destroyed your crop. Tell me how much rain. Pata nahi ji. And you start measuring it. All it takes is a water measurement. And we are helping farmers measure their own soil health. Because now you have ways of measuring how much wealth in the soil there is.
To come back to this concept of slow living in all the spaces of our life, what do we do with the advent of artificial intelligence? What do we do with the fact that we all seem to be in some sort of algorithm-driven reality, which is, once upon a time may have been called a parallel reality, but today it is the reality that many of us inhabit. We may hate it, but it still governs our lives.
I think the main thing is to not let it govern your life. you know.
What is it doing
and,
to us?
And recognizing that artificial means artificial, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't use it as a substitute for the real.
What is it? I know you have a chapter on this in the book, but what is this? What is this sort of technology domination and the domination of sort of the big tech bros on our universe doing to us?
I think if the fossil age was the substitution of the body,
Yeah.
with the work machines do with running on fossil fuels, what is called artificial, which is a wrong word, because all it is machine learning. You get those machines to learn from many programs. You know, you get Barkha interviewed, you get 20 other interviewers interviewed, and then mimic them somehow and get that machine learning. I've had 3 interns who've come to learn organic farming at Nabdanya farm, all left so-called, and they said, no, it's not artificial learning, it's just machine learning. I did machine learning. I was working on robotics. And at the end of it, they want a meaning in life. Everyone wants meaning in life.
Yeah, but are you worried about what AI? You know, we are in the grips. I was just reading news of resignations from some of these big AI firms. People are getting uncomfortable. People in the industry are warning that the world is hurtling towards a space that we don't even fully understand and we may not be fully in control of. When you talk about slow living, where does that reconcile with the domination of artificial intelligence?
I think slow living requires that you be thoughtful and you be careful. And handing over your brain to a machine is not slow living. Handing over your brain to so-called artificial intelligence is not the smartest thing for our species to do at a time where the earth and our species is facing major challenges.
What is the biggest threat to the world as we know it today?
I think for me the biggest threat is the fossil age celebrated speed, but it also celebrated bigness. Because living systems have their limits. You know, if I weave, my loom has to be a certain size. If I'm plowing, my plow can only dig that deep. And I have seen the mechanically harvested grain, and I've seen the soil being upturned very, very deep. But besides speed, I think thoughtlessness and not thinking has become the other externality. And so bigness is celebrated, but then firms become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they don't just buy up other businesses, they buy up governments. So governance is moving into big business.
You know, in the last month in the what's called the NCR area, which is Delhi and its surrounding areas, we had 3 deaths from young men falling into pits, into an uncovered manhole, into an unfinished swamp. And for me, these issues, the pollution, the quality of air, you know, that Delhi has green spaces, yes, but that you can't go and use those green spaces because you can't go for a walk in the winter months. These should be issues, but they don't become electoral issues. And because they don't become electoral issues, change doesn't come. What is it about us as people that we aren't angrier about these issues? I don't care which party, just these issues.
I think the public has fallen into the trap of treating the propaganda of the political system as the way to define their life. And on the open drains, you know, earlier it used to be that there were public systems that built drain and filled up the hole also.
Yeah.
But now there's a new economy called the zero budget economy. And I did a book about 3 years ago where I studied. Zero budget is only, you know, look at where you can make money. Don't look at the hole, because that's a cost and that's a liability. So filling the hole is a liability. Digging and getting a contract for laying a pipe, that is where you make your profits. So the contract system has gone that way in India, and that's why you've got the whole place is dug up holes. You know, as the smart cities are being made, all smart cities are about laying new pipes. and all new pipes are being laid by digging holes. Our Rajpur Road, where we live in Dehradun, it has traffic jams all the time because there are holes all the way. But there at least they put
the covers.
They put a little
barricade around it, so you know that. Yeah.
So you could fall into this pit.
Yeah.
But these deaths of young people, and you can see, these were young people who were doing well.
Yeah.
They had jobs.
Yeah.
They were not unemployed.
It's very tragic. It's
and
horribly
the fact
tragic.
that they were coming late shows how much they're made to work. One was a bank manager coming back late at night, and the other.
One was a labourer. The last death was that of a labourer. But I just think the fact is that nobody, rich or poor, should be dying from falling into an open drain because somebody forgot to barricade it, cover it, or.
But I think the open drain is a symptom not just of the new economy but the new politics. The old politics used to be पानी को साफ रखो. अब इंदौर में, माओ में, सब जगह लोग मर रहे हैं. पाइप्स नए ले कर रहे हैं पर गलत जगह हो रहे हैं क्योंकि जिसको कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मिलता है पाइप ले करने का उसको कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं मिलता है स्विच का. और पहले एक सिस्टम होता था and externalities were always included.
Finally, Dr. Shiva, I want to end by a return to the book Slow Living, which is now out, and it's a very interesting book, joining the dots between our pace of life, what's happening to our earth, and even the food we should eat or the food we can grow. What is the one thing that you gave up in life, in your own life, after discovering how damaging it was?
I'm very fortunate that I never adopted
anything that you needed to give up.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you were just born wise.
No, even when I was in Canada, which was largely a meeting, outside lettuce, there was no fresh vegetables those days.
Then?
And the rest was the soups, with all the soups the same. And I learned how to cook simple things. I learned cooking. And I think there are many things we are being made to forget. We are being asked that, we are being told that that's backward. I think everything that was defined as backward are the things that makes for slow living. Learn to grow your food. Learn to plant a garden. Even in your apartment in a city, learn to cook a food. Start having parties around cooking food,
Yeah, it can be fun.
It can be fun. Make it fun. Make it fun. And for a while I was vice president of a movement that was started in Italy when the first
slow food?
Yeah, slow food. When the first junk food movement, when McDonald's first started on the Spanish steps in Rome, then Carlo Petrini, who started slow food, said we cannot destroy our food culture with this. And he called it slow food. But what he did, instead of growing food, he looked, because anyway Italy has terrific cuisine.
Yeah.
So he made a label, and all the little cafes that made good food, he made them slow food cafes, and gave them a certificate. And that's how it. But I have another friend in America who had some wealth, and he started slow money.
Yeah.
Investing in ways that. If you have money and someone else does not, for example, I think he helped a baker set up a bakery by being able to buy good grain and being able to sell fresh bread. So you can have slow in every part. And in slow clothing now.
Where is slow food going to reconcile with 10-minute deliveries?
And I think they will reconcile by enabling the little cafe to be able to have some of the young people who are unemployed deliver on a cycle.
Yes, we always have to look for hope in a fast-changing world. Thank you so much. Congratulations on your book. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
It's a joy talking to you,
Thank
Barkha.
you. Thank you. Good to see you after ages. Thank you, ma'am.